Hey, good afternoon to you. 506 now, News Talk 105.9 WMAL, where we are making sense of the news. You can join us today at 888-630-9625, 888-630-WMAL. Coming up, the left is very worried that the American people might notice that Joe Biden is senile. They've been petitioning the White House to please put him in front of some interviewers, make it seem like he can handle it. The White House tried that last night. They did a test run in a place where nobody would really see Biden, and even that was a disaster. I've got that coming up for you. But first, speaking of disasters on the left, Fanni Willis and her entire office down there in Fulton County, Georgia, looks like they're on the verge of being thrown off the case. We'll see now. I mean, there's some questions of whether or not this judge has the stomach for it, Judge McAfee. But he's been, as far as I can tell, he's been conducting a rather fair hearing on the question. And the idea here is that it appears that Fanni Willis and her lover Nathan Wade have been misleading the people of Georgia about the status of their relationship when it began. In fact, they didn't tell anybody about it until very recently. And they're working together in this office to take down Trump, to destroy him. And all of the available evidence certainly suggests that she's been in a long-running relationship with this guy, that he didn't have the qualifications to even work on this case, and that he's making a lot of money doing it. Today, Terrence Bradley, who's a friend of Nathan Wade's, was testifying. And after resolving some attorney-client privilege questions, he finally gets up on the stand again and was asked about whether or not he had ever heard that Fanni Willis and Nathan Wade had engaged in sexual acts inside of the office. And here's a little bit of how he answered today. Take a listen.
I don't object to asked and answered. He's testified that
he hasn't answered. We haven't heard an answer.
He testified he had one conversation with Mr. Wade in the back of his law office.
No, and his answer may change. So
Tip him
overruled.
off as to how to answer the question.
I can't recall what the conversation was. I do recall knowing that he would go down to the office or had been down to the office, but I can't tell you in what capacity or when or any of that. No.
Mr. Wade told you that they had sex at that office, though, correct?
I don't recall him stating that, no.
I don't recall. My memory's just not working on that subject. Hans Von Spakovsky joins us now. He's a senior legal fellow at the Heritage Foundation. Hans, good to have you with us, sir.
Well, thanks for having me. You know, he couldn't recall. He constantly couldn't recall all throughout the testimony. He was clearly being extremely evasive, and he was trying to walk back all these things he had said. That's called a prior inconsistent statement. And, you know, you could see the judge. The judge was constantly taking notes every time Terrence Bradley said, "Oh, I can't remember. I don't recall."
None of this adds up in a good faith explanation, because this guy, first and foremost, he's an attorney. His job is to understand all of this. He's already admitted to some great extent that Nathan Wade did have an intimate relationship with Fanni Willis over the course of many text messages with the opposing attorney, Miss Merchant, who was asking all of these questions. And it seems like they've kind of got him dead to rights. So the use of the phrase, "I don't recall," you tell me as an attorney, when you hear that, what kind of flags does that put up for you?
Oh, it's not just the language, but it was his body language. And for folks who haven't ever been in a courtroom, let me tell you, one of the things a judge does is he watches the body language of a witness. And look, I've been in a courtroom. It was very clear to me that, frankly, Terrence Bradley was, I think, lying on the stage in the courtroom. And let me tell you one of the most important things for everybody to understand here. He's not just a former friend of Nathan Wade. He was his law partner and, most importantly, his divorce lawyer. And for him to now say, "Oh, I was just speculating about Fanni Willis and Nathan Wade, and I don't really know if they were having an affair or when it started," That is simply not believable, and here's why. In Georgia, under the law governing divorces, adultery is one of the reasons given for obtaining a divorce. And remember, this was not a friendly divorce. Not only that, but if a partner commits adultery, that can negatively affect the division of marital property. It affects alimony payments, etc. So if he was going to actually be a competent lawyer representing Nathan Wade in the divorce, he would have to question his client about his adulterous relationship. When did it start? How extensive was it? He would have to, if he's a competent lawyer, know that information to be able to handle the divorce case.
So that would be an essential element for him. It'd be like documenting his name and age. He would also write down the status of his affair.
Yes, because that would be, if the wife, that would for sure come up in the divorce case and could affect, like I said, the division of marital property. That's standard under Georgia law. So he's trying to claim now that, well, he didn't know anything about it and didn't ask any questions about it. That is not believable.
It is unbelievable. The other piece that stood out to me, on the legal side today, is that he kept looking over to the attorneys on the Fanni Willis, Nathan Wade side of the conversation, almost like he was stalling for time. He didn't want to answer the question. I think he would pretend to forget the question so that he would force the attorney to repeat it over and over. And he kept staring at Nathan Wade and the attorneys who were sitting there, almost as if he was looking for answers of what to do. And in fact, they kept raising objections. And during their objections, they would vocalize some of his previous answers as a way to almost guide him to repeat them. Did you get that sense too?
Oh, yeah. You know, the question I would have been consistently asking him every time he was being confronted over something that he previously said or previously texted and now was trying to take back is the standard line of, were you lying then or are you lying now?
Right. In order to emphasize how inconsistent these statements are.
Exactly right. And, yeah, you know, you could see that he was looking to Nathan Wade's lawyers, waiting for them to object, waiting for them to give him hints on how to answer the question. We'll never know. But I'm just wondering whether he, at his practice in Fulton County, I wonder whether he's been basically told or threatened that if he wants to continue to make a living there, he'd better take back all the things he said before. I mean, that's pure speculation on my part. Just like what he said. Remember, he said he was speculating about whether they're having a relationship. Yeah, well, I don't believe that, and no one who watched his testimony ought to believe that.
Is this one of the wildest high-profile cases you've ever seen? Like something like this happen, where the prosecutor, it turns out, is the villain, and it appears to have lied to the court, and the witnesses to all of this are now clamming up. I mean, this is one of the most bizarre things I've ever seen.
Oh, it is. And the only prior example of this, which I can remember, and you may recall this, is remember more than a decade ago when a local prosecutor in North Carolina charged members of the Duke lacrosse team with raping a woman at some kind of party.
Right.
And it turned out it was a complete and total hoax. This woman had made it all up, and the prosecutor knew it. He knew it was a hoax, but he continued with the case. Why? Because he was running for election.
Political pressures.
And he thought this would help him politically, which I think is exactly what's been happening with Fanni Willis.
So based on everything you've seen so far and all of this testimony, all of the evidence from the text messages to the cell phone data that was just obtained by Trump's attorneys this past week, demonstrating thousands upon thousands of text messages exchanged between Nathan Wade and Fanni Willis in early 2021, well before he was hired on to this team to go after Trump. All of the calls between them, all of the visits based on geolocation data that he made to her apartment, or at least in the vicinity of it. If you were the judge on this case, how would you handle it today, Hans Von Spakovsky?
Oh, I would recuse her from the case. I would recuse Nathan Wade and the entire Fulton County District Attorney's Office. I would transfer the case to a different county so that the DA there could re-examine the case and decide whether to continue it. And then I would send notice of my findings to the Georgia Bar Association and tell them they need to investigate her for ethical violations. And I would send a notice to both the state attorney general's office and the U.S. attorney for investigation of whether she broke state and federal law by receiving kickbacks, luxurious vacations from a vendor for the county government.
Yeah. And that whole thing where she's like, well, no, they weren't kickbacks because I settled up with cash. I was paying cash for all of those expenses,
right?
Which is why there's no paperwork to document any of it. If the whole concept behind you paying for those things was to make sure that the public could trust you, why wouldn't you keep a paper trail to support it?
That is exactly right. You as a public official would know that this could come up, and so you would carefully want to document that you had reimbursed Nathan Wade,
yes,
or the special, unless, of course, you never actually did.
So is it possible that if this case is transferred to a different county, is it possible that the district attorney in that county says, I'm not touching this thing, in fact, we're dropping this case?
Well, frankly, if they have any sense, that's exactly what they would do. Because look, we've got there's all kinds of other stuff that has come out that isn't even being talked about, like a former DNC official, way overqualified, being put in as an assistant DA in Fulton County, which brings up the whole issue of what is that guy doing there? And does that mean that the White House really was directly involved in trying to get this local DA's office to target Donald Trump?
Give me a better sense of this. So you have a former DNC official, and you said he's way overqualified, so he's just kind of there as a minder, in your view?
DeSantis, a guy named DeSantis, no relation to the governor. The story, I think, was broken by Breitbart, that this guy's an assistant DA in Fulton County with all kinds of connections to the Democratic Party, the
yes,
DNC, way overqualified for just working as an assistant DA.
The name
in
is
Fulton County.
The name is spelled a little differently too. It's D.I. Santis, D-I-S-A-N-T-I-S.
Right.
The headline on the Breitbart piece is exclusive: Biden administration planted operative Jeff D. Santis in Fanni Willis's office to target Trump, sources say. This Democrat operative there as the deputy district attorney. Oh, what a world. Oh, holy cow. Well, credit to Breitbart for breaking that story. What an important story in this saga. And this is just a mess. I mean, what a complete disaster. And as far as, if you're one of Trump's attorneys this week, Hans Von Spakovsky, you have to be thinking, man, this is really breaking our way.
Oh, I think so. By the way, we should mention very quickly that part of that story is that this DeSantis guy handpicked the members of the grand jury based on their voting records.
Wait, that includes that crazy grand jury forewoman with the wild eyes,
yes,
who said that she wanted to swear Trump in. She couldn't wait to do it to his face.
Yes. Yeah. So that tells you a lot about the basis of this lawsuit, if that's correct.
Holy cow. All right. Well, Hans Von Spakovsky, as always, we've learned a lot from our conversation with you. Thank you, sir. Good to talk to you, and I'll have you back very soon. Thank you very much.
Sure thing. Anytime.
Hans Von Spakovsky over at the Heritage Foundation. Always. Let's go to the phones. That's where I find Mike in Gainesville, line 5. Mike, thank you for your patience, sir. You're on the Vince Coglianese Show. Hello.
Thanks for taking my call. Can you hear me all right?
Yeah, I hear you great, Mike.
You caught me off guard there, but I was just listening in. Yeah, Mike Johnson is missing a huge bargaining chip here with Joe Biden. If he wants to get what he wants, Joe, that we fund Ukraine and Taiwan and Israel all at the same time.
Yeah.
Mike Johnson said, I will give you that if you're willing to sit down for an unrehearsed 3-hour news conference where the first 3 questioners are OAN, Newsmax, and Fox News. And at the end of the 3 hours, you have to take a cognitive test right in front of us.
Yeah. Let's see if you have the stamina to handle all of that. Yeah, most of us, we don't work just 3-hour workdays. You go a lot longer. Even I know we only do 3 hours on the radio, but the workday stretches beyond that. But that's it. Joe Biden just do a 3-hour workday that concludes with a cognitive test, and that would be enough, in your view, to give him all the foreign aid that he could possibly desire.
Well, we'll give him a vote. He may not get the vote through, but he says right now Speaker Johnson doesn't even want to have the vote come up. They're going to have a discharge petition here, I think, in the middle of March, where they actually have a coup and go around Speaker Johnson. But in the meantime, Johnson has the yay or nay on whether they want to take up the bill.
Right.
So at the moment, he has some leverage to make things happen.
Yeah.
Joe Biden has to agree to let's say, build the wall. We'll have to begin funding finishing of the wall if we're going to fund Ukraine.
Yeah.
All these things he could say, I have the leverage to make these things happen if you're willing to, meet me halfway.
Yeah, he should go big. Every time I've had a car negotiation, I've always asked for extra stuff at the end. Like I come up with a price that I'm kind of happy with, and I'm like, by the way, throw in one of those keychains. Also, give me one of those car mats over there. I like that too. And then if you do that, then I'll do the deal. And they're like, all right, fine. Look at this guy taking us for all he's worth. And, that's fine. I'll just take the extra stuff. So, yeah, so as he's like, hey, give me a border. By the way, throw in a cognitive test, too. I want one of those. And, hey, bring out the White House doctor. Have him answer some questions. And let us know about the pills you keep putting him on every time he sounds like he's lucid for a sentence and a half. We'd like to know about that. Would you throw in one of those? Also, would you throw in resigning from office? You do those things, then maybe some Ukraine funding is on the way. In fact, the White House has pushed Joe Biden out in public last night in a highly controlled environment. They thought maybe if he answered some questions from a nominal comedian, maybe that would be a good way to campaign. It turns out it's not. It was a complete disaster. It was a failure of a test, and we've got the evidence. That's ahead. Hey, good afternoon to you. It is 5:35 here at News Talk 105.9 WMAL, where we're making sense of the news. You can join us today at 888-630-9625, 888-630-WMAL. The left has been very panicky lately that people might actually notice that Joe Biden is senile. I love how stupid they think we all are, that they could pull a fast one on us. Oh, no, he's totally with it. He's the smartest man in the room. He's way better than everyone else. Like, the White House says stuff like this. It's totally North Korean. Insanity. And they got really mad at the Robert Hur report that Hur was like, yeah, I talked to him, and he couldn't remember basic details, like when he was vice president of the United States or the date of his son's death. He couldn't remember these things. And then the White House says things. And then Biden comes out and he's like, how dare you? How the hell dare he even bring up my son's death? And then Robert Hur has to release a statement to the press. It wasn't me. I didn't bring up the death. It was literally Joe. Joe brought up the death and then couldn't remember the date. So it's just disaster after disaster. So you see him in public, and Trump was making fun of this past weekend at CPAC. He said, even Biden uses the baby stairs. He goes, we call them the baby stairs. So Trump, getting off Air Force One, would use the adult stairs. They put Biden on the baby stairs in order to get him down. And so the left has been panicking over this. And I saw, Nate Silver and all these people, they're writing columns, writing in the Atlantic, writing about how, in order to prove that Biden is with it, he should do some interviews. He should do some events that are, quote, unscripted. And in fact, one of the criticisms from the left of Biden was that he didn't do the Super Bowl interview with CBS. Now, the Super Bowl interview is like one of the easiest possible interviews you could do as a Democrat president. You could sit down, they're going to give you Gayle King or somebody who's going to ask you the gentlest possible questions. Does CBS have cartoon characters? Maybe one of the cartoon characters would have conducted the interview. It's like, it's the same parent company that has SpongeBob SquarePants. So SpongeBob could have done the interview with Joe Biden on CBS ahead of the Super Bowl. The White House could have even encouraged them. Hey, CBS, have SpongeBob do the interview. SpongeBob and Patrick will interview Joe Biden. And they didn't even do that. They didn't even do that. Now, meanwhile, Trump offered himself up. He's like, well, if they're not going to do it, I'll do it. I'll take the slot. I'm the favorite for president. CBS, perfect opportunity. You can interview me. CBS, not being a journalistic enterprise, decided, no, we're not going to have you on the air. We're not having Trump on the air. No, we don't want more people to see him. So the White House is under this pressure from their left to prove it. Prove he can do it. So last night, I believe they aired their show at 12:30 at night, so technically very early this morning, NBC aired an interview with Joe Biden. This morning, while all of us were sleeping, they aired an interview with Joe Biden to a very small audience. The audience doesn't even crack 1 million people nationwide, according to Nielsen ratings. And the show is called Late Night with Seth Meyers. Now, you may remember Late Night with Conan O'Brien. Late Night is it was the show that followed the Tonight Show for many years. I definitely remember Late Night with Conan O'Brien because, first of all, Conan he's a talent on a different level for most of these guys who do talk shows. And Jay Leno really screwed him, didn't he? And that whole transition. He was the Tonight Show host for 8 seconds, and then NBC pulled the rug out from under. Anyway, so back when Conan was hosting Late Night for NBC, my wife for my birthday got me tickets to go see the show, and we went and saw the show, and it was one of the greatest. It was a very cool experience. I had never been inside one of these studio audiences to see a talk show like this, so I didn't really realize how it worked. First of all, the room is much smaller than I thought. I thought it was a big studio. No, it's a very small room, and they have signs telling the audience how to react. Applause, like you're supposed to clap when the applause sign is going off. And they warm up the crowd. They get everybody. They bring out a comedian first to kind of talk to everybody, and then they bring out Conan himself. Conan comes out and works the crowd. And I happen to have a great seat just based on where we were in line. There were no assigned seats. It's just first come, first serve. So we were up near the front banister, and I was sitting right on the aisle. And Conan grabs me and pulls me out of my seat and starts dancing with me. They have and remember at the time they had Max Weinberg and the Weinberg Seven. I think that's what they called them. They were the house band for Conan's show. Max is also the drummer for the E Street Band. That's Bruce Springsteen's band. And they're all playing. They're playing their music, and Conan's doing his goofy robot dance. He grabs me, pulls me up. I swear to you, this is a real story. He grabs me, pulls me up, and has me dance with him. And so I'm dancing, and at the end of it, he was like, "Oh, hey, good job," and he pulls me close for kind of like a bro hug, where he shakes my hand, gives me a left arm around the back hug, and I kind of pat him on the upper shoulder twice, and then he makes fun of me. He's like, "What are you doing? Rubbing my back?" And he starts making jokes at my expense. And the crowd's laughing. They think this is funny. So Conan's picking on me, and right after that, he's like, "Well, Vince was such a good sport. Vince, why don't you go say hi to Max Weinberg?" So he sends me down on the floor, literally on the floor of the set, and I stroll on over. Max steps down from the drum set, and he hands me his old beat up drumsticks, because the sticks were the sticks that he had just been using probably for the last 24 hours. They've got dings all over them from tapping the sides of the snare drums and everything. And he hands me the drumsticks, shakes my hand, and I head back to my seat. The show's not even started yet. I don't even remember. I think there was an animal guy on the show or something. I forget who it was. It was a total blast. I had such a good time. It was a crazy good memory, and I have these drumsticks still at home. It was totally cool. And I was like, I went home. I couldn't believe it. I was telling family members, I was like, not only did I dance with Conan O'Brien, Max Weinberg literally gave me his drumsticks. I can't even believe that happened. So it was a great birthday gift that year, many years ago now. Anyway, so now the show has this former SNL guy called Seth Meyers hosting it. And I don't really know Seth Meyers all that well. I guess he did the the news thing, Weekend Update, he did for a while on SNL. I didn't think he was particularly funny. But whatever, he was on SNL. And now he hosts this show. And apparently it's been a decade, because last night they were saying it's been a decade of the Seth Meyers show. It's like, a decade? How did a decade already pass with that guy hosting the show? How did he even keep it? It's not that funny. And the White House decided to send Joe Biden to be on the show last night. They said, okay, here's the perfect place for him. First of all, they film in the middle of the day. It's 3 o'clock in the afternoon in New York. So that's perfect. That's Joe Biden's 1 hour when he's awake. Let's have him on the show then. They'll record it, and then they'll air it at 12:30 at night to the world's smallest broadcast talk show audience ever. And I looked it up, by the way. Variety did a report on it in the winter. Colbert has 1.8 million viewers. Kimmel has 1.68 million. Fallon has 1.3. And then Late Night with Seth Meyers rounds out the bottom with 792,000 viewers. That's nobody. That's nobody for a broadcast network. Meanwhile, Gutfeld, I think Gutfeld's got something like 4 million a night. Like these guys are not even touching him. And he's on cable. He's not on the broadcast channels. The broadcast channels always had a built-in advantage. Not so anymore. Now you're watching, like, Gutfeld is doing an actual comedy show, is destroying these guys. So I learned a couple things last night. One of them is Joe Biden is not with it at all. I kind of knew that, but he's incapable of even doing the scripted format because they work this out with the guests ahead of time, including Joe. They make it really clear. They rig the thing. They make it so like they're going to do shtick. They're going to ask him questions, and he's going to have a couple of canned answers. You could tell where the interview was totally pre-scripted. And even then, Joe Biden was whiffing. The other thing I learned, and I figured out last night is, in fact, I watched it today, but I figured out in watching it today, they didn't know that Joe Biden was going to make it to the show. I'm pretty confident of that. And the reason for that is because they didn't include Biden's name in the opening credits to the show. Normally with these programs, they include the name of all the stars. I'm going to play the audio for you. This is very bad form. I'm literally playing it from my phone right into my microphone because we didn't have time to pull it. But take a listen to this. See if you can hear it. So if you had the President of the United States on your show, don't you think it would rate the opening credits to the program? Don't you think that would like appear at some point? No, it doesn't even appear. And this is consistent with what we've been hearing here on the Vince Colonnese show, the deeply sourced Vince Colonnese show, which is the following. The reason the White House doesn't put anything on Joe Biden's official schedule is because they do not know on any given day whether or not he is cognitively prepared to do that. That's true. And I'm not making that up. I have absolutely heard this from sources who definitely know. In fact, it is a cause of immense concern for the people who handle the logistics for moving the President of the United States. With prior presidents, law enforcement and all the people in the White House, they typically have at least 24 hours to be prepared for a trip outside of 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue. There are a lot of moving parts, thousands of people who are involved. It all takes figuring out the security, how to shut down roads, what law enforcement agencies to engage. It is a massive operation to move a president of the United States. And in the Biden era, the unusual nature of the Biden era, especially with the law enforcement guys, they don't even know that Joe Biden is moving until the very last second. And then all hell breaks loose. It's pandemonium to get people in place. They don't have time to pay guys overtime, put them into position, know that they need certain guys who are on duty someplace and then have other guys who are ready to shut down roads. It is chaos every time they move Joe because nobody knows if Joe's going to be cognitively with it, which is why the White House doesn't put things on his schedule. That's the situation we have right now. So it appears that even NBC wasn't quite sure that Joe was going to be there last night, but he showed up. He showed up. And so here's some of it. Here's Seth Meyers asking Joe Biden about his age. And boy, it's not giving me any confidence. It didn't make me think, man, this guy, I had him all wrong. He really is with it. He's cognitively way ahead of the rest of us.
You mentioned some classified materials, some documents recently leaked, some classified documents. And this isn't a gotcha show, but I do want to ask about it, that says you are currently 81 years old.
Who the hell told you that?
Yeah.
That's classified.
That's classified. All jokes aside, according to recent polling, this is a real concern for American voters. How do you address that concern going forward as you come up to the 2024 election?
Well, a couple things. Number one, you got to take a look at the other guy. He's about as old as I am, but he can't even remember his wife's name.
Yeah.
And number one. Number two.
Look at the other guy. He's about as old as I am. He can't even remember his wife's name, says Joe. Now, this is a weird thing. I heard that and I thought, where did that? I saw this clip actually before I watched the whole show. And I said, what is this? Like, you know how the left has these conspiracy theories where they have like fragments of some thing that occurred and don't actually understand what it really was? Turns out what Biden was just referencing was that, in fact, it's very likely that NBC wrote that joke for him because Seth Meyers earlier in the program, and by the way, I think Chris Plant, apparently, I'm told Chris Plant brought this up earlier, as he would, because he's a keen observer of these things. So Seth Meyers had a monologue towards the beginning of the show where he made a joke about Trump not knowing his wife's name was Melania. In fact, he thought his wife's name was Mercedes. Now, do you and I know anybody named Mercedes? Are we familiar with anybody by the name of Mercedes? Is there anybody possible? And I'm not talking about the vehicle. I'm talking about a woman named Mercedes. Anybody? Thank you. Yes, Mercedes Schlapp for you in the front. Excellent answer. That's totally right. Listen to Seth Meyers first say this in the monologue, and I'm going to unravel this weird left-wing conspiracy theory.
Former President Trump told supporters last week that former First Lady Melania Trump will soon be making more regular appearances on the campaign trail. Not if she heard what you called her last week.
I call up my wife our great First Lady. She was a great for people. Loved her. Yeah, people love her. Oh, look at that. Wow. Mercedes, that's pretty good.
I'm sorry. Mercedes? You had a nuclear meltdown when Biden messed up the president of Egypt and you can't remember your wife's name? Guys, I hate to say it, his mind is slipping. I think he's too old to run.
Now, do I need to explain this? I feel like most people already know what this is. Well, I'll explain it anyway. So the audio that Seth Meyers played came from Trump's speech to CPAC this past Saturday. And remember, the people who run CPAC are Matt and Mercedes Schlapp, as you might imagine. Trump, of course, is reacting to the crowd being so favorable towards Melania, and he gestures over to Mercedes like, wow, this is a pretty impressive crowd. They love Melania. That was Trump's take on all of this. Here is Trump as he actually said it from Saturday.
My wife, our great First Lady, she was a great for people. Loved her. Yeah, people love her. Oh, look at that. Wow. Mercedes, that's pretty good. Yeah, she's good. And she loves our country and she loves the people.
Yeah, so that was Trump on Saturday. I mean, you got to know literally nothing to be like, what? Oh, he thought his wife's name was Mercedes. What are you even talking about? What are you? And I should also point out that, remember, Biden himself confuses his own wife with his sister. Like the idea that this is some great own. The whole thing is like stepping on rakes and getting slapped in the face. This is Joe Biden for real 3 years ago.
They don't call Super Tuesday for nothing. By the way, this is my little sister Valerie, and I'm Jill's husband. Oh no, this is Val, you switched on me. This is my wife, this is my sister. They switched on me.
Uh-huh. That guy's president of the United States. Here's Joe Biden last night. Well, actually, technically, in the middle of the afternoon on NBC.
Every single thing we've done, I think we've got some good things done. Everything, and they told us we couldn't get them done.
Name one.
Because things were so divided. And but I think everything we've gotten done, he's just friendly stated he wants to do away with if he gets elected. And I really think his views on where to take America are older than, anyway, I don't want to get going.
They laugh that he's senile. That's the laugh line was that he couldn't remember the rest of his sentence. So then the audience reacted with joy. What the hell's going on?
What would you want to do? What's your 2024 agenda? Because I feel like we live in such crazy times that is one of the things I feel we hear less about.
Look, the 2020 agenda is to finish the job.
What is your 2024 agenda? Well, my 2020 agenda is to finish the job. By the way, finish the job. Doesn't it sound ominous in this context? Yeah, it sounds like you're taking your dying breaths and he's hovering over you with the handgun. That's not. I'd like to not have you finish any job, please. Not happy with the job you've done. You can go. You can leave. Someone else will take it from here, please. By all means. Oh man. Oh, by the way, I think I told you this. I saw Mark Levin last week at CPAC. What a joy it was to see him and his beautiful wife in person. They're the best. And guess what? He's up next right here on WMAL.